على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيبنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين صلوا على رسول الله اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق الخاتم لما سبق ناصر الحق بالحق والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم وعلى آله حق قدره ومقداره العظيم اللهم إنا نسألك علما نافعا ورزقا طيبا وعملا صالحا متقبلا يا رب العالمين اللهم فقهنا في الدين وعلمنا التأويل اللهم اجعلنا من أهل القرآن الذين هم أهلك وخاصتك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Because the time is short, we have a meeting. I'm not going to take too long, inshallah ta'ala. The issue that we're talking about today, as Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to benefit from His knowledge. Say Ameen. Ameen. It's only 10 minutes. Stay with me here, inshallah. Is the issue of doing a khatma of Quran. Okay? And so Imam al-Nawawi, he talks about this in a lengthy chapter, mentioning different narrations of different people of the past, the Salaf, our righteous predecessors, and how they used to do different khatmas. We'll read some of it, but then I'm mainly going to go into my own commentary. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. A person should maintain his recitation and do much of it. All of us should have a ta'ahadul Quran. The Quran is supposed to be something that we read and engage with every single day. Always they ask me, how can I memorize Quran? How can I learn Quran? How can I get better at Quran? The Rasulullah ﷺ, he said it. Sallu alayhi. Ta'ahadul Quran. Ta'ahadul Quran. Ta'ahadu al-Quran. How many times a day do you talk to your wife and see your wife? A lot. If you don't, you're going to get in trouble. Because she's your sahiba. Make your Quran your sahib. Just as you would call a best friend, how are you, how was your time? You spend time with them, you enjoy talking to them, you enjoy being in their company. This is how our hearts should be connected to the Quran, attached to it, always going back to it. Ta'ahadul Quran. This is the only secret. You want to know how hufaz become hufaz? Because they love the Quran so much, they don't get enough of it. They just want to keep reading. You know how the greatest scholars become big time mufassirun? Because they love the Quran, they can't get enough of it. Even at night time, they're thinking, I can't wait to go open the Quran and learn more. What is Allah trying to tell me? Having a love for the Quran, having a connection with it, and always reading it. Okay? And this is where we come into the idea of doing a khatma. Starting and then finishing and then starting again. Finishing, starting again. Finishing, starting again. Hal murtahil. You can't get enough of the Quran. You just want to keep starting and going back. Keep starting, going back. There is no book in the world that is read as much as the Quran. In fact, I'm sure if you go all of the books in the world, put them together on one scale and you put the Quran on another scale, the Quran is read way more. I mean, we have hufaz of Quran that read. I mean, there's some narrations of people reading the Quran 8 times in one day. 8 times in 24 hours. This cannot go in the processing because this is something, we'll discuss that. How is it possible 8 times in one day? 24 hours? How many times? 8 times. Not 8 juz. 8 times. We'll discuss it, okay? We'll discuss it right now. Imam al-Nawawi, he mentions that some of them would finish the Quran once every 2 months or every month, some every 10 nights, some every 8 nights. Many of them would do 7 days. And this is what is usually encouraged for hufaz. The word is fami, my mouth, bishawqin, with shawq, with love and with passion. My mouth with passion. Fami bishawq, fa suratul, the beginning of the Quran. Fa is for Fatiha. Mim is you read until Ma'idah. Fam, and then the ya, Yunus, until Yunus, so you finish Tawbah and you finish Anfal, Yunus, and then B, Banu Israel, which is Suratul Isra before Kahf, Sheen, which is Shu'ara, Waw is Safat, and then Qaf, Surat Qaf, khalas. If you do this, then you would finish the Quran every single week. And especially when Hufaz first finish the Quran, they must repeat it over and over again. I remember and I recall a time when I had finished the Quran and finished the Hifz. There was for an entire year where the least I read in that whole year was 10 juz. The least. And the maximum would go 20, 25, 10 to 25. This was the average. And this is for an entire year. And this is already after having finished the Quran several times. Ask the students that go then and compete in these Quran competitions how much they read in a day. All day long, They're just reading, and they don't get bored. They don't get tired. Do that with any other book. You'll get tired. Any other thing, you'll get tired. The Quran, but this is, of course, it's like a muscle. You train it. You don't just start today and start reading 30 juz. This is something you build over time. Okay? So 7 nights, 6 nights, 5, 4, 3 nights, and there's some narrations regarding that as well. 2 nights, some every 2 days, some every day, some twice every day, some twice each day and at night, and some 8 times, 4 by night and 4 by day. How is this possible? Okay, some, as you know, some of the Sahaba, Uthman radiallahu anh, Tamim al-Dari, Sa'id ibn Jubair, many Imam al-Shafi'i, some of these great scholars, they would finish the Quran once every single day. Once every single day. These are narrations. Abu Hanifa used to finish the Quran 61 times in Ramadan. 61 times in Ramadan. Can you even process this? I'll explain how this is possible. Some narrations 3 times per day, 8 times in 24 hours. Shay'un ajab. And in a single rak'ah, starting in one salah, in one rak'ah, and then finishing reading until you finish the whole Quran. Salatul duha, nighttime. How is this possible? You hear this, some people deny this. I'm telling you, I've seen my own teachers, my own eyewitness. They would read the Quran twice every single day, and on top of that, they would be spending several hours listening to students read the whole Quran. In fact, I remember after Taraweeh, I sat with my shaykh, and this is at a time, I can't do this now, because if you stop doing it, you cannot go back to it. It's like a muscle that you build, and then you're able to do it. But then if you don't keep up that repetition, and of course people get busy, and people have different responsibilities, you get married, things happen, nobody can maintain that pace. But there was a time when if I wanted to recite 10 juz' in front of my shaykh, I could do so hour and a half, 2 hours. Very easily. It becomes such a flow on your tongue. Imagine repeating the Quran hundreds and hundreds of thousands of times. It becomes like water, like you're breathing, like you and I are breathing. Hufaz, they're not breathing, they're going like this. MashaAllah, you're just sitting, they've read one whole juz'. They're just sitting and they've read one whole juz'. I would see my shaykh, he's walking, and the whole time you see him, you just see him reciting Quran. It just flows from them. But this can only be done with kathrat al-takrar, lots and lots of repetition. There was a program that when I was in Medina as a student, and this is as a full-time student, every single day, and this was after completing hifz and after leading Taraweeh and doing all of this, we would take every single page of the Quran and repeat it from memory 40 times. So you master the page. Even if you're hafiz, you could still get mastery of a page. You read it 5-10 times with mastery, make sure that it's perfect, and then you repeat it by heart 40 times. Do that with every page. Reading one page 40 times is like equal to reading 2 juz'. And we would do this for 3 pages every single day. 2 juz', 3 pages. And then the next day, you're not just doing 3 more pages. You're reading those pages again 5 times. So 2 juz' plus the 5, which then becomes an extra juz', 7 juz'. Add that up, until it became as though you're reading 20 juz' a day. This was a program that I did for a year. And subhanAllah, because of that program, I remember there was a time where I would recite from Fatiha all the way, and I reached till Yasin. I could read it and just with no pressure, no thought. It just flows out of you because of all of the extra repetition a person does. Through that experience that I had, I then began to understand how was it possible for these great imams to be able to do these types of feats. People like myself were able to do it. There's hufaz that even now in Indo-Pak and all of these parts of the world, they start from Fajr and they end before Dhuhr, and they read the Quran every single day. If you do this from Fajr till Dhuhr and you have some spare time before Dhuhr, can you do this also repeat it at nighttime? Is that possible? Yes or no? Yes. It is possible. So it's through hard work and effort that they get to this level, but there's also an element to it, barakah, which comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah gives barakah in their time, and that these are karamat, these are gifts and miracles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives to His special awliya. Think about it, 8 times in one day, that's incredible to just think about it. There's something that of course I wanted to relate it to you all, and how can we apply this chapter of Imam al-Nawawi. every single person here, the least amount of time that you should finish the Quran, meaning like under this point you're pushing it too much, as is mentioned in different narrations. Whoever reads the Quran in less than 3 days does not understand when he recited. And for some that might be 7. For some, because of their pace of recitation, that might be 30. Some, that might be 40. It really depends. So it goes from person to person, okay? So nobody should be reading it so much to the point where they're not actually learning from the Quran. The Quran is not just a book that we parrot, but it's a book that we also then apply. And also, I always advise everyone that you shouldn't have only one khatma of the Quran. There should be several different khatmas of the Quran. One khatma you should do just to understand what is Allah trying to tell me. Tadabbur, reflections. That is what we do in Fajr Quran. Somebody said, Shaykh, I want to read more. Read more when you're by yourself. But when we're together, we want to sit and do tadabbur of the Quran. So there is a khatma that we do in order so that we can understand the book of Allah Azza wa Jal. And there is an even deeper khatma than that. And that is one that takes a lifetime of effort. And that is the tafsir lessons that I give. And I do 1 ayah, 2 ayahs at a time. We sometimes spend 30 minutes talking about 2 ayahs. Imagine you did that for the whole book of Allah. That would take 20 years maybe. 10, 15, 20 years. That's a lifetime's effort. Imam Alusi, he spent 15 years writing his tafsir. 15 years. That's after becoming a scholar. So you see, that's a lifetime khatma. Then there is the year-round khatma that we do with tadabbur. And then for ourselves, what about recitation? The scholars suggest that the least we should do, the least so that we don't fall into sin and we don't fall into those people that are abandoning the Quran, the suggested is 2 times in a year. If you could do 2 times in a year, Abu Hanifa even mentions this. 2 times in a year, this is good. This is what usually people do. They do 1 in Ramadan, they force themselves, and they do 1 throughout the year. So this is also something that I would suggest. If you cannot do the Quran several times throughout the year, then at least twice in the year. For the hafiz of the Quran, is it enough that he does twice a year? No, because what's going to happen? You will forget it. So then it becomes makruh, it becomes disliked for a hafiz of Quran to read it in less than, if you're taking more than 30, 40 days, then you're leading yourself to negligence of the Quran because of laziness, and then you're going to end up forgetting, and all the effort you put in will be put to waste. So the hafiz, at least once a month, he should finish the Quran. 1 juz a day is very maintainable. But this is for the hafiz. For someone who cannot flow from his tongue, then at least 2 times in a year. And I remember my mom, she would always do 2 times in a year. And she's just a normal person, but she would always keep herself to 2 times in a year, 1 in Ramadan and 1 throughout the year that you sit and enjoy and be able to recite. So that is what I always suggest people. When it comes to, again, the least amount of time, I don't think we have any concerns regarding that. Anybody here reading Quran 2 times in a day? Please tell me so I can come and kiss your hand, please. Anybody here sitting and finishing 2 Qurans in 1 day? Nobody's here. Nobody's doing that anymore. Unless you're sitting amongst the Somali and Hufaz and Farooq Masjid, perhaps they are still doing stuff like that. Alhamdulillah, maybe Allah's protecting us because of their barakah as well. So again, the Quran is a book, ta'ahadul Quran. We constantly go back to it. We start and we finish. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He keeps our hearts always attached to the Quran, and that He brings light to our hearts with the Quran al-Kareem. وصلى اللهم على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. بسم الله, تفضل. Suggested? Yes. So there are narrations where Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam sallu alayhi, he said, don't go more than 7. Don't go more than 7. لا تزيدن على ذلك. There's that companion who used to do everyday Sawm, everyday fasting, everyday Quran, this, that. The Prophet ﷺ, he told them, your family has a right over you, your body has a right over you. 7 days, you're able to recite the Quran properly with proper tajweed and how it's supposed to be recited properly. 7 days. And there's some narrations that says 3 days. Yeah, so there's 7 and 3, both are different narrations. Again, Imam al-Nawawi, he says something so beautiful, okay? He says the general rule, he said it varies from person to person. From person to person. So you see, depending on how able you are in your recitation, and also how much time you have, and all of these different things. So yeah, for myself, I found after all of these different programs that I've practiced that the best method is exactly as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. Wallahi al-azim. The program I did for 20 juz, this, that, was very extreme. And there was a time where I was going through like depression. Not depression, but like sadness. And then my shaykh told me, I told him, it's too much for me. A different shaykh, not the one that was in charge of the program. He said, مَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ لِتَشْقَى. Allah didn't send the Qur'an down for you to be in misery and for you to be, always, in لِتَشْقَى, so that you can be like that. So the Qur'an is, ad-deenu yusr, the religion is ease. Read the Qur'an, enjoy, beautify your voice, and have a good time with it, rather than forcing yourself to finish. The goal should never be to finish the surah. The goal should be to enjoy the surah. Yeah.
So there are in our Asian culture.
Yeah.
So I see the Quran, they khatam the Quran.
Yeah.
In 3 days.
Yeah.
They like a bullet train speed.
Yeah.
So Allah says in the Quran, "Abatil Quran
Tartila.
So how you can follow?
Yeah, so وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. See, this is exactly where you see the wisdom of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the ahadith, many narrations, is that if a person is reading 70, 80 juz a day, you're not going to be doing all your mudud. There's no way, impossible. Your ghunnaz are gone, your ikhfaz are gone, your iqlab, everything is gone. I remember, because I used to recite like that too. You have to read like this. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ أَلَّا تَخَافُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. This is not the way to recite the Quran. And if you ask any mashayikh of Quran and qira'at and tajweed and people who are actually in the field, they'll say, no, don't recite like that. You're not allowed to recite like that. Because where's your tajweed? Read with tajweed, read 5 juz', read 6 juz', read 10 juz'. That is feasible within the day. Reading 90, 100, these are, we would say, karamat, that Allah's special gifts that He gave them. Yeah, alhamdulillah. Yeah, bismillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.